So, welcome back to the Prescription to Travel MD podcast, friends. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can clearly see that I am no longer in my amazing villa in the Maldives. However, we'll be doing a deep dive into how I booked our trip to Singapore and the Maldives on points, and I'll show you some ways that you could do this too. If you've ever dreamed of, sipping champagne on your business class flight and then waking up rested without a crook in your neck and ache in your back, after a long journey to the other side of the world or, visiting the bustling city of Singapore and jetting off to your villa in the Maldives where you're then surrounded by crystal clear waters and sipping coffee while watching the sunrise over the Indian Ocean, all without spending a fortune, this episode is for you. I'll break down exactly how you can get here on points and miles, step by step. I'll tell you all about why we chose to stay at the Waldorf, which was phenomenal, and how you can stay there too. I'll give you all the ins and outs so you won't be surprised when you finally do book your trip, and I'll even tell you about other options that you should consider. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you stay tuned until the end for pictures and videos from our stay. Our decision to go to the Maldives all started with my husband saying that he wanted to go for his birthday. And this was like last year, the year before. And as you probably know, the Maldives is super far and the birthday was like months away. So the Maldives is definitely something that you need to plan for. It's not, spur of the moment, let's go to Mexico kind of thing. So we took a detour. We went to Curacao instead, which was a wonderful trip. But it was already in my head, and I was determined that, we were going to make this happen. We're going to go to the Maldives. And unlike myself, who has to look at all the options, he saw a picture and decided that the Waldorf was where we would stay. So that was done. He got the Hilton Aspire card, which you probably have heard me speak about before. And he did this with the intention of getting enough points to book our stay at the Waldorf Astoria in the Maldives. At the time, it was offering 170,000 point sign-up bonus, plus the free night certificate with an annual fee of $550. So this was offset by a $250 resort credit, which we use for Hilton's stay over spring break, and I think $200 in flight credits, and a few other things like global entry, which used to be included but has since gone away. So anyway, the card seemed like a no-brainer. Fast forward, we booked one of the Good Neighbor hotels when we went to Disneyland, and we booked for ourselves and our families, and, they paid for their room, but it was charged to our card. We took a trip to Maui using CME, which we were reimbursed for, and then we stayed at another Hilton property. We booked a $300 stay at the Waldorf here in Las Vegas. If you book the day after Christmas, hotels in Las Vegas seem to be really cheap, so we used the $200 Amex Platinum Fine Hotels credit, which you get if you have the Amex Platinum card. This also, by the way, gave us free dinner and breakfast, and we love a spa day. So we added on a day at the spa, which we then charged to our room. And all the charges from these hotel stays were charged to our Hilton card and essentially earned 14 times back, plus the original points we earned while we were working on our sign-up bonus. So between these, we earned about 520,000 points. We don't really use the card otherwise. I still didn't really appreciate the value of this card at the time. And, I was working on subs for other cards and really just focusing more on business cards and not personal. So I didn't initially sign up for the Aspire card. If I had, there would not have been a need to buy points. However, when I saw availability pop up for the Waldorf, I ended up just, spending the $800 to buy enough points to get the additional night. So I always say that there are certain times you want to buy points, although this is, not always optimal. And I usually only recommend buying points if you have a specific plan in place. In this case, spending $800 for one night would have given me enough points to book 4 nights. When you book 4 nights on points and you have silver status or higher with Hilton, you get an additional night free. So essentially, I spent $800 to get 5 nights at the Waldorf. This ended up being about $160 per night. I'm frequently asked, how did I know when the award calendar would open? Honestly, I didn't. It was timing and just being ready to take advantage of the opportunity when it presented itself. So I happened to be up around 3 a.m. one night, and I saw that there was open availability for the month of February at the Waldorf. Like literally every day in February was open for 150,000 points per night, which is the rate that you want to try to book it at. So you'll often find nights available for like 1 million points or something insane, with a few of these scattered throughout the month. However, I needed a stretch of several nights for the 150,000 points per night. And then given the difficulty of getting here and how complex it can be, if you have to hop from one resort to the next, you definitely want to have at least 5 nights here. So when I saw this, I couldn't pass up the opportunity. A few months earlier, I missed a chance to book Q Suites because I hesitated. And now I realize it just wasn't meant to be. So, but I went ahead, I didn't hesitate. I booked the hotel and then it was done. And then I was tasked with having to find our flights. So, with no Q suites available at the time, I looked to Singapore Air, which was another airline that was on my list of products that I wanted to try. I stumbled upon Singapore Air when I first heard about Singapore Suites. So, Singapore Suites, their first class flights, no longer operates from the US, but you can still use Singapore Air, which is one of the best airlines for getting to Asia. I found Saver rewards for 103,000 points per person to Singapore. There were no Saver rewards available to get to the Maldives at the time. However, I knew if I could get to Singapore, I could book a separate flight to get to the Maldives. So I booked lay flat business class seats for a total of 206,000 points and $10.40. I booked our flights back also on Singapore Air at 107,000 points per person and $110 each for a total of 214,000 points and $220. I guess it was a lot of points to get us to Singapore. Additionally, booked economy flights for 20,000 points each way for a total of 80,000 points there. It was like a 4.5-hour flight, so don't ask my husband about it. But yes, we booked economy flights there. Short flight. We spent a lot of points to make this trip happen overall, though. There are definitely cheaper ways to go about this. You can book the same flight on Singapore Air through Aeroplan for about 30,000 points less each way if you can find availability. At the time, there was no availability, and I was also holding out that Q Suites would come up at a great points deal for either a flight there or back, and that never happens. But you've got options. We positioned to LA from Las Vegas, which basically means you book a flight from your home to get to another airport, usually a larger airport, larger city. It's going to have better options for great flight deals, such as JFK, New York, or Chicago. You're more likely to find something there, or in Atlanta, or San Francisco than from Las Vegas, or from Phoenix, or from Cleveland. So it was a quick flight over. We spent the day in Santa Monica, which is something that we hadn't done in a while. So it was actually really nice. Before we had kids and moved back to Vegas, we used to spend a lot of time in California whenever I would come home to visit my family. So it was kind of nostalgic, us, no kids, LA, sunsets. We flew out from LA. We got a chance to check out the Star Alliance Lounge, which you do have access to if you're flying Singapore Air business class. The food and drinks were great. We started to check out the noodle bar in the back. I have to tell you the story about this noodle bar because I was really excited about it too. And it was getting a lot of attention, but there was this man there who was fixing his food, and I saw him lick the back of his hand. And then I tried to ignore it, and he did it again. And then I was so perturbed. Not that there's not a risk of unspeakable things happening when you're not watching or getting your food from places anyway, restaurants, fast food, whatever, but I couldn't unsee it. I didn't get any noodles from the noodle bar, which I was sad about, but I grabbed my drink and some snacks, and I headed out to the outdoor terrace in the back of the lounge there. And it was quiet and empty, probably because it was cold. Not cold, but LA cold. And the fire pits were going, and it was just a nice place to relax and enjoy a cocktail quietly before a flight. So if you are at the LAX airport and you check out the Star Alliance Lounge, just know that there is this hidden terrace way in the back. Not really hidden, but if you don't know about it, you're probably not going to walk way back there. So back to the flight to Singapore, which was great. Singapore Air is set up. It was set up in a 1-to-1 configuration. So if you're flying solo, you get a bit of privacy if you're sitting at a window seat. And if you're traveling with someone, you still, get your own space. We were seated in the middle in the seats that were right next to each other. And there's even a partition that you can close. So if you're sitting next to the person and you don't know them, you can, just pull up your shades. So they're constantly feeding you. So, 16 hours of eating and then sleeping and watching movies and catching up on the books that I've been wanting to read. It's just glorious. I was actually a little sad when the 16 hours were over, honestly. It was just such a great flight. We arrived in Singapore that morning, refreshed and ready to start our vacation. And, we really wanted to check out the Jewel, which is the waterfall attraction at Changi Airport. However, the waterfall wasn't on, and it doesn't come on until about 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. during the week. So we didn't actually get a chance to see it in all its glory, but it was still worth it to just check it out, enjoy the garden, nice to just sit for a little bit, really pretty. Just know that, if you're coming in very early or leaving super late, you may miss the waterfall actually being on. And note that you'll have to exit to get to it because it's before you check in. So you don't have to actually going anywhere to access the Jewel and the other attractions at the airport. And if you plan to see it on your return to the airport, make sure you stop by before you check in. Otherwise, you'll miss it again. So there's a slide and a canopy that you can walk on and just all sorts of really cool things to do just at the airport alone. And then even if you do get into the airport and you miss the Jewel, there's not a lack of things to do once you're inside. There was a sunflower garden in the back, and, it was an area where you could watch the planes take off and just be outside. There are plenty of lounge options if you're flying Singapore Air Business and you have access to their lounge there. There was a priority pass lounge that you could access. There are a bunch of areas for kids to play or enjoy if you have littles. There's also a ton of shopping and duty free, all the luxury stores, restaurants, and more just to keep you busy on your layover. So we enjoyed the airport for a bit. We got a taxi to the hotel. We were staying at the Andaz, Singapore. The Andaz is a Hyatt hotel. We booked it for about 20,000 points per night, $0. Did this by transferring our Chase points to Hyatt. If you have a Chase Sapphire card, either Reserve or Preferred or the Chase Inc. Business Preferred, it allows you to transfer out any of your Chase points to its partners. And Hyatt is hands down one of the best options to use your Chase points. My Chase points are solely used for Hyatt stays because you just get so much value out of using them this way. And as Singapore was a really good stay for us, it was comfortable and modern and convenient. They have a really nice infinity pool that looks out over the city. You can see the Singapore Flyer, and in the distance is a bar that we checked out, Mr. Stork. It was okay for me, but it was conveniently located at the hotel. The Andaz is walking distance to Haji Lane, where we found lots of colorful shops and restaurants and arts on the walls and a lot of tourists. Arab Street was right around the corner. There you'll find like the Sultan Mosque and places to get kaya toast, which is, I guess, a big thing in Singapore. You will see lots of influencers in the wild, so just be forewarned. There was definitely a lot of action in this area. The Andaz was also conveniently located to the MRT, which is the Singapore's mass rapid transit. It's the underground train system that you can use to easily get around Singapore. You essentially take the elevators downstairs, you'll walk out into a hallway. There are a bunch of offices, shops. You'll pass by 7-Eleven and you can hop on the train and get anywhere you need to in the city. We found it really convenient and easy to use. You just swipe your credit card or mobile wallet on your phone and you go right through. You don't need to stop and buy a ticket. You do need a separate card to swipe for each person, and it didn't take Amex, so clearly not a problem for me. Got plenty of those, but just something to keep in mind. So we got a chance to visit the gardens by the bay, the cloud forest, the super tree grove, very pretty when it's lit up at night. They're all connected, and we essentially just bought a pass that gave us access to all three. There's a lot of walking, so just make sure that you plan for this and wear comfortable shoes. You essentially walk through one, you exit, and move on to the next. And we were there during Lunar New Year, so lots of people out and about. I'm not sure if that's the case on a normal day. Even when we went to the top of the Super Tree Observatory, the line to get down was very long. Again, not sure if that's the norm, but because of the holiday, it certainly was busy. You can't go to Singapore without visiting Marina Bay Sands. So if you've ever seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians, you know that it's iconic and probably some other things, but that's like the one thing that I remember from that movie. And if you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie before you go because it's really good. Yeah, so Marina Bay Sands is a whole complex. It's a resort and a casino. It's a high-end shopping center. It's known for its infinity pool that looks out over the whole city, which you only have access to if you're actually staying at the hotel. So we didn't stay here. We did go to Spago for dinner, and we sat outside, which interestingly enough looks over at the pool. So you can't just go, again, to the pool if you're not staying there, but you can look out and see. They've got a pretty good view, and it was pretty busy out there that day. There's a terrace that wraps around Spago where you can look out over the other side of the city, and you can see the Super Tree Light Show as well, which I highly recommend if you're there. So I believe you can see it from some of the other restaurants that are at the top, but I just noted that we did have a really good view from Spago. There are a lot of phenomenal restaurants and lots of shopping to check out. They have a nightly light show that you can view that we actually did take in one night. We took the MRT to Chinatown and we stopped by the Maxwell Food Center. I was going in search of chicken rice, which I did not actually get to try. I went looking for two specific stalls, and because it was Lunar New Year, they were both closed, which also meant that the remaining stalls for chicken rice had super long lines. They also don't take Apple Pay or credit card, and you either need to have cash or have their local app, which we weren't able to use as we didn't have a local bank account. There may be somewhere around this, but I didn't bother figuring it out. There's also an ATM right outside the door, so if you're in a crunch, just make sure you have like your debit card or, dare I say that, or just an ability to withdraw cash. So something to consider if you're looking to check out, I guess, any of the hawker centers where there's going to be a ton of food options that you may want to try. After 2 days of city life, we were really just ready to lay back and relax and head off to the Maldives. And so, if you want to hear about it, you'll have to tune in next week where I'll pick up right where we left off and take you on our trip to the Maldives with us. So, make sure that you're subscribed to the episode so you don't miss it. We'll tell you all about our stay at the water, how much all this cost us to get there, and so much more. I truly appreciate you all being here with me for another week of the show, and I'm hoping we can catch up soon.